For common factual legal notes, the ongoing court proceedings of Concord are referring to a competency hearing, and the attorney's communicating that there hasn't been a neurological evaluation for the court to determine if I'm competent. So it's going to be delayed. So apparently, I'm now being informed that we're waiting on a neurological evaluation. The injury was going on 12 years ago, and there was a neurological evaluation in 2021. The first one was done as an emergency because Monadnock Developmental Services filed for emergency guardianship on me, claiming it was required, and got a neuro eval looking to use that information to inform the court that I was in rough shape and needed a guardian. They were hiding the fact that I was fully aware of what was going on since 2019, and that the neurological evaluation that's required by law for these court proceedings was evaded in 2015 while the patient of St. Joe's Hospital. The first neurological evaluation was in 2021, 7 years after the injury. Dr. Martin determined that I did not need guardianship, and I communicated that clearly. He said to look at it like a menu. Literally, like when you go in and you see a menu at McDonald's, you're not getting everything on the menu. He said guardianship is covering everything. You don't need guardianship. You just need a couple things on that menu. And it was the identification of my left side neglect creating the partial paralysis combined with cognitive blindness, meaning that my inability to comprehend things accurately is because of the inability to make new visual memory. When I'm tracking data in other ways, no worries at all. There's no question of competency on any level. It's almost weird, savant-like, my understanding of physics and science, but my inability to make new visual memories is incredibly challenging. It requires other things, and the use of one hand prevents administrative duties. It's just not possible to do paperwork with one working hand, and then the inability to remember what I see each day after day. It's impossible to do administrative work on my own. So 2 factors that me and Dr. Martin were clearly in agreement about was I required assistance with transportation and administration. That's it. Did not need full guardianship. So I communicated this clearly to attorney Earl Carroll. Earl Carroll told me to agree that I needed guardianship. So he told me to falsely inform the court, to tell the court that I thought I needed a guardian. When I told him, well, the attorney and me were in agreement that I didn't. I mean, the evaluator, forensic evaluator and me were in agreement. It wasn't needed. He told me to misinform the court and tell them that I thought that I did, so that I'd get awarded a guardian, and then the guardian would be required by law to get me legal counsel to address these things because it was human rights violations. Under the advisement of Earl Carroll, I said, okay, I agree I need a guardian in 2021. They put a guardian on me. That guardian took over the lawsuit that I had in motion with Morgan & Morgan. I was their client, and I was a lawsuit against Monadnock Developmental Services because they did no disability modifications to my home, and I was a client of theirs. This was in the process of 2019, realizing what had happened, what was done. Nothing modified in the home. And I learned doing research with Department of Health and Human Services that someone had taken my identity, was getting every penny of disability income, while MDS was telling me, their case management, you don't get disability income because you don't qualify for it. Yeah. So I was suing Monadnock Developmental Services in 2020, by 2020. So in 2019 is when things came to the surface. I was able to miraculously remember that I was unable to remember. And this was using modern technology and seeing things from the day before and realizing I kind of remember that, but I don't remember any sight. Cha-ching. It all came clear what they were hiding and how they were hiding it in 2019. So by 2021, Monadnock Developmental Services was now being sued by me with Morgan & Morgan representing me. Roger LeComte is attempting to steal the home. He stole the insurance settlement from my company in the injury and then didn't pay the home off and had me sign documents in those years I'll never remember saying that I agreed I owed him money on the home. So he was using all that tactic while Monadnock Developmental Services assisted him by preventing the court from knowing what my actual medical condition was that he had successfully kept concealed from probate court proceedings while I was at St. Joe's. That was how they got me released as my own guardian in 2015 from the hospital, and then had me falsely broadcast by WMUR. So the timeline shows that originally, because I could speak like a medical anomaly, they used that to manipulate the court and make me my own guardian in years I don't remember when I was half paralyzed. They did that so that my signature could be weaponized by them, manipulating me to sign things, and they would not be breaking the law by rulings in place, by having me sign things that they put in front of me, including checks they wrote to themselves from my bank account, stealing everything, not paying off the house, and getting documents that were signed by a person who was their own guardian, that they agreed that they owed them money on that property. And that's what they used to then force the sale of the property. And then tell the courts he's a normal person when he signed these things and he owes money on it. And the courts agree with them in New Hampshire. Well, I'm a client of Monadnock Developmental Services. Hence, you see the complexity. MDS realized in 2021 that they were fucked. They had the emergency guardianship and then attorney Earl Carroll manipulate my impairment to agree. And then they used the guardianship and Office of Public Guardianship to take over my identity. And my mother helped them the entire time as hidden conservator with bank accounts and my identity, the pedigree information. So my mother backed up these people as they were attacking instead of protecting me. The whole time she was helping Roger and Tim with this dissection of my life and terrorizing of my children. So in 2021, when they did that, I was supposed to break down. Because they did that, had a guardian put on me, intercepting my settlement against MDS. So I had a settlement against MDS as a client of Morgan & Morgan. Never saw a penny because all of a sudden OPG were my saving guardians as recommended by attorney Earl Carroll. There were trust accounts in my name and they got court rulings where I'm not permitted to access those accounts. All 2021. So now here we are 5 years later and I haven't broken down again. They did that to try to get me to break in 2021. I didn't break down. I ended up at HUD and then 4 months ago, HUD does the exact same thing in protection of Monadnock Developmental Services, who was doing the exact same thing to my neighbor at 56 Main Street in Greenville, New Hampshire. Another client, traumatic brain injury, Monadnock Developmental Services. They hadn't been there in years. This person had broken down physically, like nothing. There was nothing that was provided to this person that needed their care, but they were collecting money for that person as their client since the person was 18 years old, according to her mother. So, and then at that point was like 34. So I kept the pressure on asking the management of HUD Housing, 56 Main Street in Greenville, New Hampshire. It's actually managed by Southern New Hampshire Housing Services. So I was asking Linda Smith with the tote of documents that I brought, 2 totes of documents with a dolly that I brought with me into that apartment. And all the remaining possessions that weren't stolen when my house was stolen. And I informed them calmly for the first year that the problem here is there are bank accounts in my name. I've talked to the bank manager with my advisors present, and the bank managers have said, we're sorry, the accounts, they are in your name, you're right, and you seem totally normal to us, but this court ruling's telling us we're not permitted to let you access this money. So I brought that to HUD management and said, can we please get this addressed? This is how they stole my house, is with identity theft. And this is how they're preventing me from getting anything. They're stealing all my disability income. I'm living on nothing with my house stolen. They stole my insurance settlements. And what did Linda Smith have me do? Sign a document, knowing I wouldn't remember anything that I see that day, stating that I agreed that I wasn't disabled and that I was retired by choice early. And I was just going to get SSI and pay them 1/3 of my SSI. That's what Linda Smith did, the manager of Southern New Hampshire Housing Services for HUD Property, 56 Main Street, Greenville, New Hampshire, factually. A year I waited asking for that to be corrected. Because they wouldn't correct it, I began aggressively confronting and bringing specifics. Exact same approach. They lie to the courts, weaponize local law enforcement, have me pulled out of the apartment, try to make it look like I'm freaking out, I'm breaking down. They couldn't get me to freak. So now here we are again today. We're waiting on a neurological evaluation so the court can decide if I'm competent. When we're talking about aggressive, life-threatening human rights violations ongoing for a fucking decade plus by people tax-funded and trusted assisting my parents, proven by the court rulings, proven by Department of Health, proven by ongoing proceedings. And I'm still supposed to wait for something? This is what I mean. It's like, at what point do we recognize that human rights violations is just the protocol of the staff in New Hampshire? Law enforcement is told what to do by court rulings in place. These people employed by the state collectively have a network to organize misinforming of the courts, to weaponize law enforcement, to protect them as they attack and dissect the lives of the vulnerable for theft of federal funding. Like, at what point are we going to stop playing pretend that's not actually happening in New Hampshire? And that's it for medical notes today.